Welcome back to the Coach's Corner, brought to you by Morph, for another in-depth coaching conversation. Each month, we sit down with top practitioners, Morph clients, and pioneers across the coaching ecosystem to explore the future of workplace coaching. Introducing your Morph hosts, Allie and Sebastian. Grab a seat. You are in.
Welcome to the show today and welcome at Morph. My name is Bas. I'm your co-host together with Allie. Welcome, Allie, today. How are you doing today?
Great, how are you?
I am wonderful. Happy to be here. As you know, at Morph, we are building a professionalized workplace coaching methodology that helps fast-growing organizations develop their talent, retain their talent, and overcome misalignment between strategy, leadership, and culture. To this end, we are zooming in on you, Allie, today for a second part of our interview series with you. We're going to talk about the success case that you have created recently, and we kind of introduced it last week already. I'm really excited to hear more about it. I've prepared a bunch of questions for you, and if you are okay, I would suggest us to dive in it.
Yeah, really excited to go deeper today about my case study. If you joined us last week, you'll know that the case study is really around a top senior executive, a CEO, who just was not functioning at his 100% top best. And we had to look at different ways to optimize him and set him up for success. And, ultimately it did work out. So, let's break that down a lot deeper. Let's start with the challenge that we were presented with. So this CEO started his day, I think let's start with how he felt. He started his day overwhelmed, stressed, and honestly unhappy. He felt very disorganized and really didn't know how to get a hold of his time or his calendar or his team. So this resulted in dysfunctional teams, dysfunctional time spends, and an unhappy CEO. So we really had to look at a lot of different things to address, all of these various aspects so he could be much better equipped for his day. But really, I think it is a few big chunks. His mindset wasn't 100% in the right place. His structure wasn't in the right place. And then his team was struggling because of it. So yeah, where do you want me to go first? Well, help me start.
I have a bunch of questions ready for you.
Please.
I'm really curious. What was the moment that he reached out to you, or what made you start the coaching process with him?
Yeah, so I actually started as an executive assistant because he knew he was overwhelmed by his time. That was the obvious part to this CEO, and that's a pretty standard thing for an executive assistant to come in to do. Where it morphed into coaching for us was really helping to address the team dynamics, the culture dynamics, and his mindset dynamic. So he reached out to me knowing his calendar was out of control, but he did not realize that all these other aspects of his life and his business were also contributing to that lack of control feeling he was feeling.
Yeah. And was he just as aware as you just described his situation of the context and the pain points that he was experiencing?
No, not really. He had let's say a vague idea that things weren't functioning, but he really just thought diagnostically it was only the way his calendar was organized. I remember him saying something to the lines of, if someone can just book my meetings for me, I think everything would be great. Yeah. But, that's not always the case, and it wasn't the only solve for him.
No, for sure not. Hey, and what other beliefs or assumptions were driving his behavior at the time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think this is something that drives many executives or top leadership. And it was this feeling of only I can do everything. This I must have my hands on every piece of the business. And one of my favorite sayings, and this is definitely a part of the areas I was able to coach him through, was building a team so strong that you don't know who the boss is. And that was definitely a big mentality shift for him, which came with, some practical tools like delegation as well.
Yeah. Hey, and I'm really curious to hear more about what it was that you did with him. What did the process, the programs, what did it look like?
Yeah, so in the last episode, we talked a bit briefly about my calendar postmortems. Yep. So, taking a science to looking at how your time is spent, and also, more importantly, how your energy around that time is going. Is it functioning for you, where your energy sucks and what feeds you energy? So first thing we did was really look at everything that was happening in his business, in his time, even in his personal life, figuring out how things were structured and what things were really draining him. It was a creative CEO, so it was really important to have that buffer time and that space to enjoy and explore and have a good time at work while still being productive, rather than just kind of slogging through the things that were not feeding his soul. So a calendar postmortem was number one on my list. We looked at that, figured out what was happening with his time, and identified a few things that really he did not need to do. I mentioned building a team so strong you didn't know who the boss was. This was a real opportunity and an eye-opening moment for him to see, look, you're doing HR tasks that really don't need to be at the CEO level. You're maybe doing financial tasks. Maybe it's time we hire an accountant in-house. And also I was in a position of an executive assistant as well. So there were certain things that I was able to take off of his plate. So we really looked at it that way. And not only did this help him, it helped his team feel that they had more of an impact at work. So that was a big space. Another thing was automating things. There was a lot of, let's say, government type emails or business type emails that took so much time and did not need to, but they came directly from him. So a simple fix was housing all of this information that you always needed to readily access to answer these types of emails and answer these questions. So we built a database, a Google Drive, and all of that information was easily accessible, it was easily labeled, and it was much faster to streamline and get to it. I know that might sound simple, but when you're overwhelmed by all your tasks, it's often something that's easily forgotten. So, streamlining where that information is, and then I mentioned last time templates. We templated out all of these generic go-to emails, if you have to send a message saying, oh, I would love to have this meeting, reach out to blah, 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 let's set it up. Let's make that a template. Why are you writing out those sentences every time? I know it's only a few minutes, but those few minutes add up. So we looked at things like that. And then we also really, again, just looked at breaking down the departments and the types of time spent. So we talked about that with my calendar postmortem last time. So one thing that really helped optimize the day was grouping like items for him. So, let's keep all those administration tasks together. And I mentioned for this CEO being creative, that was a slog for him. So maybe I say eat the frog first. We started with those tasks in the day, get the hard thing out of the way, and then you get a break. You go have your coffee. Maybe, this CEO really wanted to spend time with his kids. So take a walk, go with your kids. And then you come back fresh and re-energized, which is a really important part here. And you were able to much better tackle those creative tasks and projects throughout your day. So I think those were probably the biggest areas that we were able to help solve some of the challenge for him.
And some really big insights, I might say. Yeah. And now insights is one, action is two, right? And really changing the behavior, mindset. What did that process look like? How did you experiment? How did you help him affect that change and really transform?
So some of these changes were easy. Grouping like items, that was a no-brainer for him. He had no issue with that. He had no issue with slapping some breaks in between some of those harder pieces. But I think the biggest challenge was that delegation piece and sharing with your team. So especially for leaders who really want to have their hands on for things, suggest starting really small. Let's pick an easy task, one that is a low-hanging fruit for you, one that you're really not that worried about, but is awful for you to do. Let's pass off one thing a week. So sometimes it's really that slow, depending on how tightly they're gripping. So we started that way with this CEO. We're like, you know what? Let's get rid of a couple finance things right now, or those HR things. And we tried to pick one or two things a week. And I would often frame it by asking him first, what is the thing that is most difficult for you right now? Or what is the thing that is draining your energy the most this week? And that was the identifier. And then was there an easy piece to that we could pass off to another teammate? You can have check-ins with that teammate. It can start with a looser handoff, and then it can get much, much wider as we go, right? So we started small, and then each week, as he kind of got more comfortable with the process, we were able to up it to a little bit of a bigger chunk or a bigger piece or maybe a whole department. And I mentioned hiring an accountant. That was a huge one that we were able to pass off, and that saved so much time for the CEO and also empowered the team to have a new hire. Someone got to manage them, so they got to have that empowerment moment of being a manager of somebody. And it really saved the CEO a lot of time and created so much more efficiency. We weren't waiting on things. We weren't panicking about budget. It just really helped a lot.
And this also really shows to me that the power of having the time to work with someone long term, right?
Yeah.
Being able to go through the motions with each other and to
That's
take
true.
the time to really affect that change.
Yeah, those
Something
sticky
that
points take time, like the
Yeah,
holding the
exactly.
grip. That's not an easy mindset change. And ultimately that's what it was. We had to change his
Yeah.
mind
Yeah.
about letting go.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that perhaps is also what made it more than just productivity coaching. Can you expand a bit on how you tried to change his mindset, or what actions were taken in that regard?
So a lot of that was looking at leadership and the type of leader he wanted to be. He knew right away and had those great instincts about being servant leadership and serving your team and kind of being there for them and not necessarily driving the whip from the back. So he already had that mentality, but it was
Well, that's a
hard
great
for him
start.
to. Absolutely. That's a like gold piece for me.
It's the
right?
hardest part. Yeah.
Yeah, but honestly, for him, implementing it was a real challenge. He knew that, but it was very contradictory in his day to day because he still felt like he couldn't let it go. He knew what he wanted to be, but his day to day actions were not there. So I think it was a lot of conversations around what type of leader do you want to be and asking the questions like, what does that leader look like? How does that leader act? If you were to close your eyes and you wanted your whole team to say you were a servant leader, what would they say about you? And asking those sorts of questions. I'm not telling him how to answer that, but letting that come from him naturally and kind of, I guess, diving into that. And then also asking those questions as, why do you feel you need to have control? And maybe that was cases of, well, in the past it didn't go well. So if that was the case in the past, what sorts of things can we do today so that doesn't go poorly, but you can also get these things off your plate? So that might be looking at like one-on-one check-ins with the team as you're, starting to delegate. Maybe that is having sort of still levels in place where, for example, if it's a financial thing, anything below, say, $1,000, I don't need to check. But for now, anything above $1,000, please knock on my door. And then that limit can change as we go. So, it was a lot of looking at those underlying beliefs with him, looking at where you want to go, and then kind of helping to find middle steps to get us along that path.
Hey, that sounds really complete and very powerful, indeed.
Thank you.
Indeed. One last question I would like to ask you before we move to the outcomes, right?
Yeah.
And the results of your work together is you work with someone that has worked in a way for probably many, many years, right? And they have their own routines and habits. You see from your calendar post-mortem, you see a lot of insights. How do you decide what to challenge and what to protect in his routine?
That's a great question. Honestly, for all of my clients, that comes from them so much more than it comes from me. I'm happy to kind of poke at everything, but they're going to know way better than me what absolutely has to be with them. And they're going to know more than me what things feed their energy and what things drain their energy. If something drains your energy, that's an absolute red flag for me that maybe I can poke at that a little bit harder. Maybe there's something we can do here. I also believe that there's no task that is untrainable. So when we're working with a CEO, you can absolutely train anybody on your team to take on something. It may not be an easy baton pass, but it's doable. So I think generally I poke at everything, but I wait for them to give me or inform me on those pain points. And those are the ones that I would really dig in deeper and challenge any underlying beliefs with that. If they tell me it's a challenge,
ultimately.
if they tell me it's a challenge, that's something we should dive into.
Yeah, excellent. Hey, if it's okay with you, let's move on to the outcomes. Really curious to hear what you were able to change for him, why it matters, and perhaps tell us a bit about the broader implications of the work you've done together.
Yeah. So I think there was lots of things that were the outcomes here. One, so much more control over your time. Did not feel scattered anymore, didn't feel pulled in a million directions, and actually was happy and excited to start his day because it was clear to him there was a routine, there was a cycle, and it functioned for him. It wasn't random anymore. So that was a big thing. And the outcome for him, I kind of alluded to that, was he was happier. Like I would notice him coming into the office, he smiled. He was excited. There was energy that was positive and momentous kind of going into all of these different meetings. Whereas before going into a finance meeting, oh my gosh, it was like pulling him into it, So we were really able to change that attitude going into meetings, which rippled out. So far, it rippled out to the teams that he was meeting with. It made the teams feel much happier. And generally, that alone improved the culture. It set it on a much better course. Another thing was empowering the team, right? So that delegation moment makes everybody else on that team feel like they're contributing to a cause in a meaningful way. They're not just executing on a vision, they're contributing to that vision.
Yeah.
So ultimately, one of those big things was the teams beneath him that were maybe a little dysfunctional were happier, empowered, and working as a team because they all felt like they had something to contribute. I noticed the directors started talking to each other more, whereas before, maybe they didn't so much. So that was a big piece as well. And yeah, generally, I think there was a ripple of efficiency that went through the company. You know, your leader is the person you look to see how to operate through an organization. And if you see that your leader is killing it, he's running through his meetings, he's efficient.
That can be super infectious.
Yeah, it inspires you, right? So
yeah,
I noticed that there was an absolute shift in productivity, but I think that really stemmed from the culture change as well.
Yeah. And were people aware of the fact that this CEO took it upon himself to start a change, or did they merely react to the change in his mindset and behavior?
Yeah, so I think it was actually a bit of both. The leadership team, so like that director level, they all were very aware that there was some coaching happening behind the scenes.
Okay.
He was open about that. And I think that's very powerful, especially at that level. Sharing with your team, I'm making some changes. I want your feedback as we make these changes. Let me know what's working for you. So at that level, 100%. I'm not saying he made like a town hall meeting and told the whole organization, but it was absolutely witnessed and felt through the whole organization. So at every level, this change truly waterfalled through the organization.
Yeah. No, that's super. It's incredibly powerful. It's such a nice case that you have to share with us. Something I would be curious about. Do you remember? You hinted on something already before, but do you remember seeing a first sign that something was shifting in him?
That's a great question. I think for me, it was, okay, so maybe I'll back up for a quick second. I think trust is built between the meetings. And what I mean by that is before the meeting starts, when you're all sitting at the round table, is it dead silent or is there chatter? Are you guys, talking about what your weekend was like, how your kids are? And so the first thing that I noticed is there was a lot more change in those moments, a lot more trust in those moments. So he was actually initiating some of these conversations. And for me, that was an absolute shift and sign that A, he's happier at work, he trusts his team more, and his team is trusting him back. So for me, that was the first kind of measurable sign. You could also say seeing him start his day with a smile was definitely a noticeable thing as well. But I think the trust being built in between meetings was a huge, powerful moment.
Yeah, that is great. I love to hear how you describe the change in the CEO's energy at the end of your time together, and especially the ripple effect that it had on the leadership team, company culture. That is really, really, really profound. Maybe to wrap up, a last question. What does this case tell us about the role of coaching in leadership development?
Yeah. I think it teaches you that no matter what stage you're at, there's probably somewhere that you could challenge yourself or your mindset. And by making small shifts, you can really ripple a change, not only for yourself, for those immediately beside you in your team, but also through the entire team. So literally by adjusting your calendar, by adjusting your mindset, you made a happier organization as a whole. And we all know that a happier organization is more productive and is going to do so much more for you than a team that is low morale or struggling. So the small shifts that you can make at any level will truly impact everyone around you. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Allie, for this case. I do have a couple of, if there's still some time, I have a couple of general reflections or general questions I would like to ping pong about with you. And maybe a first one for our coaching audience, our practitioners that are listening to us today. What part of this process might surprise other coaches?
That's a good question. I think a part that might surprise some coaches is that, well, people might look at a CEO or a leadership person as knowing what's going on with their time. that that's not often the case. There's a lot of people who don't really realize how their time is spent. So taking an analytical look at things like your time spent and your energy spend is really quite powerful, and it informs them. They are living their life, but sometimes you're kind of living it with blinders on, right? So for me and for some other coaches I've spoken to, that is a bit of a surprise to hear. So I would encourage them to take a look at that with their clients. For sure.
And I think this is especially a powerful insight for those coaches who have yet to start working with executives, right? And they might see that as a barrier, right? Wonderful. How common is this story among leaders that you've worked with in your time?
Yeah, I think aspects of it are absolutely super common. Now, is it going to be a case that every leader is exactly the same and struggling in these areas? No, but I think there is definitely, flavors of this that are pretty common, or maybe one of them struggles with energy, but another struggles with getting a hold of their time. Maybe one struggles with delegation. I think delegation's maybe one of the biggest ones for leaders, but there's kind of always a piece, and how much you use in that recipe is a little different for each person.
Yeah. And I guess how it shows is different for every leader, but it all comes down to personal efficiency and organization, time management, right?
Yes,
These are the big chunks. Good. Maybe a deep one to end with.
Okay.
To link it back to the story of today. When does a calendar become a reflection of identity?
Well, that's a deep question. I think it becomes a reflection of your identity when you feel like you're a slave to your calendar. And maybe that's a powerful way to think of it. That CEO at the beginning, when it was a challenge for him, he felt like he was a slave to his own time. He had no control, had to answer to everybody. So I think it becomes identity for you when you don't have control over it and it rules your life more than you are in charge of your own calendar. At least that's my thoughts on it.
No, that is a very spot on. If you are listening today and you recognize this exact thing, you know where to find us. You know where to find Allie. Allie, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your story. Is there something you would like to share before we wrap up? Anything we forgot to mention?
I feel like we hit it all, but I would suggest to our listeners today, whether you're an executive or not, maybe take a peek at your calendar, see what things are working for you. And, at a quick glance, you might be able to pick one thing today that is not working for you. And I challenge you to try to address that, whether it's eating the frog first, delegating, or maybe you can just get rid of it entirely. So maybe there's one piece from your calendar today you can get a little more control over.
Sounds like we have some homework to do.
It's fun,
everyone,
I promise.
Thanks for tuning in. Allie, thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
If today's conversation sparked something for you, share it with a colleague. Drop us a note, reach out to keep the dialogue going. You got a question, an idea, or a reflection you'd like to share? We'd love to hear from you. It helps us to shape future episodes, create content that truly matters. Drop us a line at pod@morph.org. That is pod@morph.org.be. And you can find more about our work on our website. Until the next time, let's keep rethinking what coaching can be, and let's morph together. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Coach's Corner, brought to you by Morph. If today's conversation sparked something for you, a question, an idea, or even a request, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Curious to learn more about our work? Head over to morph.org.be to explore more. Until next time, let's keep rethinking what coaching can be and morph into a better you.